It never begins with something loud. It starts quietly with a number you are not ready to see. That moment does not announce itself. A random notification lights up your phone in the dark. You open it without thinking, and suddenly you are awake for a reason you did not choose. You look at your balance and for a second nothing happens. Then something shifts inside you that you cannot ignore anymore. It is not panic. It is not fear. It is recognition, the kind that forces you to be honest with yourself. You are not in a crisis. You are not falling apart. You are simply living too close to the edge without realizing it. Your income covers your life, but only barely. There is no space for mistakes, and life is built on mistakes. Something always happens. A bill appears. Something breaks. The situation changes, and everything resets again. Progress disappears, quietly, not dramatically, not loudly, just enough to keep you in the same place. This is what real financial pressure feels like. Not chaos, not noise, just constant calculation running underneath everything. Every decision gets filtered, every purchase gets evaluated, every plan gets adjusted before it even begins. You stop noticing it because it becomes automatic. It becomes the way your mind works without asking permission. At this level, money is not a tool, it is the environment. You are living inside, and environments control behavior more than effort. You think differently when you are surrounded by limits. You act differently when there is no margin for error. Then something small changes. Not a miracle, not a breakthrough, just a decision you finally make. You choose to move slightly differently. Maybe you save a small amount. Maybe you pay a little extra toward something. It does not feel powerful, it does not feel important, but it creates movement, and movement changes direction. You start chipping away at what is holding you back, slowly, quietly, without needing anyone to notice. Month after month, you continue, not perfectly, not aggressively, but consistently enough to matter. And then one day something happens, a balance reaches zero, and you pause longer than you expected. That zero is not about money, it is about control. It is about proving to yourself that change is possible. For the first time, a financial outcome happened because of your decisions, not because of circumstances. That moment does not change your life immediately, but it changes how you see everything moving forward. You begin to act differently. You begin to think ahead instead of reacting to what is happening. Saving starts to become part of your system, not because it feels exciting, but because it feels necessary. At first, the progress feels slow, almost meaningless, like nothing is really changing in your life. But the numbers begin to grow. Even if they are small, they start to feel real in a way they never did before. Eventually, you cross a number you have never reached before, and something shifts inside you again. It is not about the amount. It is about the identity that comes with it. You are no longer just managing money, you are holding it. And that difference changes your behavior more than the number itself. You become more intentional with your decisions. You think about consequences. You think about time. You start noticing patterns in your spending habits. You recognize where money disappears and why. You begin questioning small choices that once felt automatic, and that awareness starts saving you more than effort. You stop reacting immediately and start building a system that works, even when you are not thinking about it. This is where most people get it wrong. They think growth comes from earning more when it actually comes from behaving differently. Because behavior compounds just like money does, and over time it becomes your biggest advantage. Your income eventually grows, not dramatically at first, but enough to create space you did not have before. Your savings grow alongside it. Your confidence builds quietly, and your system starts to feel stable. But then something unexpected happens. You realize stability is not the same as freedom. You run the numbers honestly, and the future looks fine, but not exciting, not enough to escape. That realization creates discomfort because you understand you have done everything right and still feel stuck. This is the stability trap where everything works but nothing really changes in a meaningful way. And that discomfort forces a new question. What are you actually building toward? You stop focusing only on earning more and start thinking about leverage and systems. You begin experimenting with something small, something that can produce income outside your time. At first it is insignificant, then it grows slowly, then it becomes consistent enough to notice. Instead of spending it, you reinvest it. You keep your lifestyle steady and let the system expand. And then one moment changes everything. Money arrives without your effort, and it feels different. Not because of the amount, but because of what it proves. Your time is no longer the only source. That realization shifts your mindset completely, because now you understand systems can work for you. You start building more of them slowly, intentionally, without rutting the process. You move from effort to design, from working harder to working smarter. Without announcing it, your thinking becomes sharper, your decisions become clearer, and your actions become more focused. You speak less about what you are doing and spend more time actually building it. Your numbers continue to grow, but they stop feeling like achievements and start feeling like checkpoints. Because the goal was never the number, it was the control and freedom behind it. At higher levels, everything changes. Again, you stop chasing growth and start managing direction. Decisions become more strategic, less emotional, more focused on long-term positioning. You begin building something bigger than yourself, a system that does not depend on your daily effort. You start thinking about assets instead of income, about ownership instead of effort, about leverage instead of time. That is when time changes, not in amount, but in control, and that changes everything, because money can always be created. But time once lost never comes back eventually. You look back not at the numbers but at the journey that brought you here. And you realize it never started with success, it started with almost nothing. A small number, a quiet moment, and a decision that felt insignificant at the time. Everything after that was built slowly, consistently, without needing validation. Because this process is not about money, it is about transformation that happens quietly. You do not notice it daily, you do not feel it immediately, but it is always happening until one day you realize you are no longer the same person who started. That is the real cost, not financial but personal, the distance between who you were and who you became. And that distance compounds just like everything else, one decision, one habit, one step at a time. Until everything changes, not suddenly but permanently, in a way that cannot be reversed. And it always begins the same way, with a number that feels small, and a moment that feels ordinary, and a decision that quietly changes everything. You think it is about money in the beginning, but slowly you realize it is about control over your life. You think it is about earning more, but eventually you understand it is about keeping and growing what you already have. You think it is about luck, but over time you see patterns that reward discipline more than randomness. You begin noticing how most people stay stuck, not because they cannot move forward, but because they never change direction. They earn more but spend more, they grow income but not assets, they chase comfort instead of freedom, and quietly they stay in the same place, just at a higher level of income, but the same level of control. You refuse to follow that pattern, even when it feels easier, even when it feels normal. You delay upgrades, you delay comfort, you delay recognition. Because you understand timing matters more than desire, you start choosing long-term outcomes over short-term satisfaction, even when no one understands your decisions. This is where separation begins, not loudly, not visibly, but internally, in the way you think. You stop needing validation, you stop explaining your choices, you stop comparing your path. Because comparison slows you down and clarity speeds you up, you realize most people are performing life while you are building it. And that difference becomes visible only after years, not days. Time passes and your systems grow, your assets begin producing results without constant input. Your confidence becomes quieter but stronger because it is built on proof, not opinion. You trust your process because you have seen it work repeatedly. You make fewer decisions but better ones. You take fewer risks but smarter ones. You focus on what compounds and ignore what distracts. And slowly your life becomes less reactive and more intentional. You are no longer responding to problems, you are designing outcomes. And that shift changes everything about how you move forward, because now every action has direction, every decision has purpose, every step has meaning. And that is when growth accelerates, not because you are working harder, but because you are working correctly. You look around and realize very few people ever reach this stage. Not because it is impossible, but because it requires patience. Most people do not have. It requires discipline most people avoid, and consistency most people underestimate. And that is why it works, because it is simple but not easy. Because doing the same correct thing for years is harder than chasing something new every week, but you stay consistent. You stay focused, you stay aligned with your long-term vision, and over time, that becomes your advantage. The gap between you and others starts widening, not because you are faster, but because you never stopped, and one day you realize something quietly but clearly. You are no longer trying to escape, you already did. Not in one moment, not in one decision, but in thousands of small ones, and that is the truth. Most people never see. Freedom is not built in a day. It is built in patterns repeated over years, and it always begins the same way, with a number that feels small, and a decision that feels insignificant, but changes everything.